Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you watch this video, where you are in the world. But nevertheless, I am very excited to jump into learning and growing with each and every one of you guys as we prepare on this amazing journey together. Just so you know, my name is Kedra Herbert. I am the Elementary School Director of Student Experience for the Achievement First Network. And I'll get into a little bit more about that later on as I start to talk about my leadership style. But before I do that, I wanted to give you guys a window into who I am on a more personal level before I start talking about my professional self. I am a member of the illustrious organization Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I crossed Fall 10, and I am still a member to this day, just at the graduate level. I am also a mother to both a preteen as well as a little poodle named Leo. Yes, he is my spirit animal. Some days I look like him on the right, and in other days I look like him on the left. And I have been an educator for over 8 years and have spent that time doing that in the New York City area. I'm originally from Orlando, Florida, and I went to the University of Florida, which is located in Gainesville, Florida. Upon graduating in 2013 with my bachelor's in anthropology and a minor in communication studies, I decided to take all of that knowledge and I moved happily to New York City, where I have started my journey in education. There, I was a teacher at La Cima Charter School in Bedside, New York. And that really propelled me to want to think about how we can create schools that think about children in a holistic sense. And while I loved La Cima, I deeply craved and needed just a bit more structure, especially as I kicked off my educational journey. So I ended up switching to Achievement First, and there, I've had a range of different roles and responsibilities, both personally and professionally. At Achievement First, I was one of the founding school teachers at Achievement First Linden, where I went from teaching third grade kids at La Cima to teaching these wonderful, beautiful children who are little first graders. And that in itself was a fun challenge for any of my early elementary educators. You know what I mean? That same year, I ended up taking full-time custody of one of my students. Um, it was supposed to be a 6-month gig that honestly turned into 6 years later, and that's how I ended up with a preteen. Um, and at the school, besides taking on that role and responsibility, I also had other responsibilities where I became the grade level leader, a new teacher coach. I became our founding behavior specialist, as well as over the last 3.5 years, I have been the dean of students and network facilitator for what we call new team training, where I teach and coach new teachers who are joining our organization. Um, as you can imagine, it has been a wonderful experience and I've grown tremendously. And now, with 2 days remaining as the Dean of Students, I am actually transitioning out of my school role into a network leadership role as the elementary director of student experience, where I'll be supporting all of the elementary school deans of students as they begin to learn about their leadership styles and fostering and creating these wonderful school environments where kids can truly be their beautiful black and brown selves. I think in my personal and my professional life, I tend to lead the very similarly. I think um, I am a leader that definitely leads with my values and leads with them at the forefront of everything, always and forever. So when I think about the things that I care about and I'm deeply invested in, that is leading for racial equity, as well as through that equity work, because as you guys all know, especially if you're educators or in some type of social work or social justice careers, you know that leading for racial equity can be taxing. So you have to remember to take care of yourself as well as take care of the people that you're in charge of, whether that is your children, your family, your friends, as well as, at least for me, the 464 kids that I've been in charge of over the last 3.5 years, as well as the leaders and teachers that go to my school. So while I love to embrace all six um, values, I think in my life that shines um, through and through will always be leading for racial equity as well as caring for the whole person. But when I think about in a more formal sense, when I think about the different theories and modalities of leadership, I think I'm a pretty healthy combination of transformational as well as servant leadership, where I'm able to inspire those around me, as well as caring about them deeply to be able to meet their own potential as well as to tap into the potential of other people. And I think these things, these different type of leadership styles and the things that I value as a leader shows up in my personal life. So in my personal life, it shows up where I need to lead for racial equity as well as caring for the whole person because I am a mother of a Black child who has to go out into a world and be able to dominate and command a room and a space, especially spaces that oftentimes do not look like him. As you can see in the conversation that we had via text message, and how he felt worried about initially attending a school that was predominantly white, that's his school on the right, um, and helping him to feel cared about and loved because he was unsure if he would get the same type of love and treatment that he would receive, that he's received from home in a different environment that he wasn't sure was going to affirm his identity. And I think that's even more complex as we think about the things that are happening in our world, where people are existing in these complex realities. And as I'm leading a school through racial awakening slash just racial unrest, as well as trying to lead a school through a pandemic and figuring out what school reopening looks like, as well as like the type of environment that we want our kids to be able to learn in, where it can still be, where they can still feel safe, loved, and cared about, and being able to inspire others as well as to be able to soothe others and continue that relational work through my planning as a leader. And I know there's like other school leaders who are in this program because I've watched some of your videos. I think it's very easy right now to get bogged down in a lot of the planning that we have to do as we start to gear up and reopen our schools. However, I think in my transformational as well as servant leadership styles, I think in terms of, I think about how I can show up for my people and be able to meet their different needs, where they can be able to tap into their potential as well as inspire them to press on, especially in very difficult times. And for a lot of us, me, you, my son, as well as my teachers and the people that I lead, the truth is that we live in a reality that just is out of whack. And we have to be able to, I have to be able to ground the people that they're around me, and I do that through my leadership. So when I think about my earlier years in formal leadership, I think about me being a servant leader where I made sure that the needs of others were at the highest priority, because at the time, that is what my school needed. My school initially had a school principal who was not yet able at the time to meet all of their needs. And as a result, the morale went down, and our school began to spiral and it was lost. It became a very visionless school where people were leaving. It became a revolving door. And as a result, I had to step up more in my servant leadership skills and making sure that I connect on a relational level with other people. And as our school started to transition into a place where people could see themselves be able to thrive. I think I was able to tap more into my transformational leadership. Um, and I say that because my school went through a period of its own racial awakening where we saw that the things that we were actually doing were not leading for racial equity. It was actually quite oppressive to the students and families that we served. And from there, our school needed leaders that were going to be transformational and was going to be able to intellectually stimulate them as well as inspire and motivate them to do these amazing and wonderful things. And if anyone has ever worked in a turnaround school, you know it is hard. And it is hard because a lot of the work that you do is people relationship. If you cannot get your people inspired and fired up about making change, it's going to feel like you are a hamster just running on a wheel, not going anywhere. And from there, I think in my second year as a dean of students, I really had to tap into how can I be able to influence the people around me. And there was able to create a strong vision and lead a staff to be able to make these different organizational shifts so that we can be an organization, but more importantly, a school that just doesn't talk about leading for racial equity, but a school that actually taps in and does the work of being leaders and teachers of equity. And I think in that time, especially as I think about my second, third uh, year as a dean of students, I had to motivate all of the people around me, including the other leaders, my academic deans, as well as my principal, to make sure that we move from our own self-interest to that of one that is for the greater good. So that's like me standing in front of my staff of 60 and looking them square in the face and telling them that they are not the most important people in the room, that our kids are, and our kids will always be the most important people. And if they're not going to be able to get on board with serving and leading change in our organization for the people that we care about the most, then it's probably not the place for them. And that is hard to do that. And it didn't feel easy. But I think in terms of that, I've had to just tap into just many different facets of my identity as a leader, from my values, from being a servant to being a steward leader, to be the transformational leader that was able to change an entire school culture in less than literally an academic year because we started this work in fall 19 and we had the one of the biggest organizational jumps in all of our network. So out of 32 schools, we were actually the number one school in organizational health. And organizational health, if you know anything about that, it is really contingent upon how a leader is leading you, and that leader has to be someone, hello, me, that leads with their values and leads with a vision. So that's a little bit about me as a person and a little bit about my leadership style and the ones that I connect to the most. I just look forward to meeting all of you soon in some way, some capacity. And I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit about me. And y'all, we have 3 years together, and I can't wait to see you guys at the end.